Welcome to the new chapter of our heptalogy Mystery of the Greats. Marilyn Monroe, the mind they never saw. Everyone knew her, and yet no one did. The world saw the smile but never heard the silence behind it. She became a symbol of desire and a prisoner of her own image. For some, an icon. For others, a fantasy. But behind all the glamour lived a woman who simply wanted to be real. She knew how to laugh so no one would notice how often she wanted to be silent. And maybe that's why the world still can't stop talking about her. Close your eyes. Imagine the flash of cameras, the applause, and a voice filled with more pain than sound. This is the story of a woman that the world saw too late. In the 1950s, Hollywood breathed with a special kind of light. The giant studio billboards glimmered in the evenings, and it seemed as though the very air was filled with the glow of spotlights and the whisper of film cameras. Stars were being born on the screens, but only a few became symbols of an entire era. Among them, a special place belonged to Marilyn Monroe. Her name became more than that of an actress or a singer. It turned into an image, a dream, a myth, a soft glow on black and white film that continues to shine decades later. Monroe was both a mystery and a revelation. Everyone knew her, yet very few truly knew her. Behind the glittering facade of the Hollywood legend was a fragile girl named Norma Jean, who longed for simple things: a home, love, quiet happiness. And perhaps that is why her story feels so magnetic. It reminds us that even the brightest stars in the sky were once ordinary people. The future Marilyn Monroe was born in June 1926 in Los Angeles. On her birth certificate stood the name Norma Jean Mortensen. But even here the contradictions began. The document listed a man named Edward Mortensen, though he took almost no part in her life. Another version suggested her real father might have been Charles Gifford, a colleague of her mother's at a film studio. To this day, researchers debate who her true parent was. Even Monroe's origins became part of the mystery. Her mother, Gladys Pearl, suffered from mental illness. At times she would vanish, only to return, and each time this brought young Norma fear and unease. Eventually, Gladys was declared unfit to care for a child, and Norma was placed in foster homes. These years, too, are surrounded by rumors. Some say she lived in more than 10 different families, others even more. In one home, she was forced to do endless housework. In another, she was treated more kindly, but never for long. There are memories that sometimes she was locked in a closet so she wouldn't be in the way. Monroe later admitted that this left her with a lifelong fear of enclosed spaces. In 1935, she was sent to the Los Angeles Orphans' Home. Long rows of iron beds, identical clothes, children deprived of toys and warmth. Illness spread quickly. Norma often suffered from bronchitis, struggling to breathe at night. Rumors went around that she was too dreamy, often sitting by the window speaking to herself. Some saw it as imagination, others as a strangeness inherited from her mother. One episode from those years survived in memory. One night, a lamp in the dormitory suddenly flashed, casting a large patch of light on the wall. The children were frightened, but Norma stood up and began to perform a shadow play, shaping a bird with her hands, flapping her arms, inventing little stories. The children laughed and forgot their fear. It seemed that even in darkness, she could create the illusion of light. But there were also darker stories. Later, Rumors spread that in one foster home, her guardian showed unwanted attention toward her. There is no official confirmation, but Monroe herself hinted at it in interviews, saying that as a child she had been forced to grow up too soon. These shadows of the past left a mark on her soul forever. Once, still at the orphanage, she told a roommate, "I know I'm going to be famous. Maybe it sounds silly, but I can feel it." The words of an orphan girl sounded like a strange prophecy, and perhaps it was this faith in her own starry destiny that became her salvation. At 16, Norma Jean married her neighbor, James Dougherty. The marriage was more a forced step than a choice. Only a married girl could avoid being sent back to the orphanage. Their relationship was simple and quiet, without much passion. When James left to serve in the army, Norma was left alone and found work at an aircraft factory. It was there, in 1944, that her life took a decisive turn. A military photographer, David Conover, was sent to the plant to take pictures of women workers for Yank, the Army Weekly. His attention was caught by a young brunette with shining eyes. A photo of Norma was published, and for many researchers, this moment became the starting point of her journey to fame. But later there were rumors that Conover had not noticed her by chance at all, that someone in the studio system had already taken interest in the girl and asked him to photograph her. There is no official confirmation, but the legend gives the story an air of destiny. Soon Norma signed with the Blue Book Model Agency. Its head, Emmeline Snively, immediately recognized her potential. It was there that Norma was persuaded to change her image, to dye her brown hair blonde. Rumors later said this change was more than just a fashion move, but almost a kind of sacrifice, as if she was giving up Norma Jean to become someone entirely new. By 1945 to 1946, her photographs appeared on the covers of Family Circle, Pageant, True Romance, Modern Screen, and Photoplay. According to biographers, in just 1 year, she graced more than 30 covers, an incredible number for a beginner model. But even here, whispers followed. Some claimed that editors were pushing her forward because someone influential in Hollywood had already seen in her a future actress. Even the choice of her name was wrapped in mystery. Monroe was taken from her mother's maiden name, but who suggested Marilyn remains unclear. The official version says it was her agent, inspired by actress Marilyn Miller. Yet others insisted that Norma had chosen the name herself years earlier in the orphanage when she imagined standing on stage. Thus, in just a few years, the girl from foster homes became one of the most sought-after models in America. But even then, her success carried a sense of something larger, as though an invisible hand of fate was guiding her from obscurity straight into Hollywood's lights. In 1946, Norma Jean signed her first contract with 20th Century Fox. By then, her name had already been changed to Marilyn Monroe. For the studio, she was clay to be molded, an actress with no real experience but a rare photogenic quality. The contract was modest, 6 months, minimal pay. She was required to attend lessons in acting, diction, and stage presence. And even then, rumors began. Some said the studio never believed in her, seeing only another extra girl. Others claimed she had a secret patron among the Fox executives, and that it was only thanks to this support her name did not vanish among dozens of other hopefuls. Her first roles were brief. In The Asphalt Jungle, 1950, She appeared for only a few minutes, but was noticed. In All About Eve, 1950, she again played a small part, and yet audiences remembered her more than expected. Producers began to say, "She has something we can't put in the script." One story tells how, at an audition, she entered the room with nothing but a notebook in her hands. Asked to read lines, she began improvising instead, adding a soft smile and a touch of clumsy innocence. The committee laughed, and someone whispered, "That's a star in the making." Whether true or just a legend, the story still survives today. Not everyone in the studio was kind to her. Rumors said she faced harassment and that for some roles she had to pay with her attention to powerful men. Hollywood in the 1950s was a harsh world where a young woman had to defend herself as best she could. In 1947, her first contract was terminated. Officially, the studio claimed there were no roles for her. But in town, people whispered that she had been pushed out due to the jealousy of an established actress who lost a producer's favor to her. True or not, no one can say for sure. Yet she did not give up. She returned to modeling, took acting lessons with Lee Strasberg, studied expression and voice. Whispers claimed she spent hours practicing in front of the mirror. Not only her gestures, but also her famous walk. Some said she deliberately trained her movements to appear slightly off balance. Others believed her walk came from an old injury to her foot. Whatever the truth, by the early 1950s, her name once again appeared on studio lists. Hollywood was slowly realizing before them was not just a pretty girl, but an actress whose magic lay in a rare blend of innocence and mystery. The early 1950s became a true breakthrough for Marilyn. In 1953, 2 films were released that made her a global star: Gentlemen Prefer Blondes and How to Marry a Millionaire. On screen, she seemed the embodiment of lightness and luxury. As Lorelei Lee in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, she performed the famous song, "Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend." The number became iconic. The glittering pink dress, the gestures, the smile, everything turned into a symbol. But behind the scenes, people whispered that during filming she was so nervous she couldn't remember her lines, often arriving on set with sleeping pills still in her system. Rumors multiplied. Some claimed she deliberately played the dumb blonde, while in truth she was well-read and intelligent. Others insisted her singing voice was often dubbed and that the real Marilyn sang far worse than the glamorous sound on screen. But these stories only strengthened her myth. No one could ever quite say where the role ended and the real Monroe began. In How to Marry a Millionaire, she played a model dreaming of marrying a wealthy man. On set, people joked that the role was too true to life. Since at the time Marilyn already moved in circles of powerful men, newspapers competed to print stories of her romances with a director, a politician, a billionaire. What was fact and what was invention, no one could say for sure. This was also when her legendary lateness began. Directors complained she might fail to show up on set for hours. Officially, it was written off as diva behavior, but those close to her knew she suffered panic attacks and sometimes could not force herself to leave her house. In her purse, she always carried pills, a mixture of sleeping aids and sedatives without which she could not sleep. An interesting fact: in the early 1950s, she first turned to a psychoanalyst. In Hollywood, this was nearly scandalous. At the time, therapy was seen as shameful, but Marilyn was seeking answers. She feared the madness that had consumed her mother and told friends, "I feel like the darkness follows me sometimes." Rumors and facts intertwined so tightly that it became impossible to separate them. For some, she was a goddess, for others, a difficult actress. But it was precisely this mixture of radiance and fragility that built her myth. Marilyn Monroe owned more than 400 books, from James Joyce to Freud. She loved to read, scribbling notes in the margins, but after her death, part of her library vanished. Rumor has it those volumes ended up with collectors or were taken away by people who feared the exposure of her private thoughts. Her famous, whispery voice did not appear as a whim. Marilyn had weak vocal cords, and she discovered a special way to speak and sing, turning weakness into a weapon of allure. Some said she cultivated this style deliberately. Others believed it was simply her way of coping with a physical limitation. In her notebooks were found recipes for simple dishes, potato casseroles, turkey, sauces. But alongside them were strange notes about herbs and infusions said to calm the nerves. It remains a mystery whether she ever prepared them or only intended to. Newspapers wrote of her unusually high IQ, supposedly over 160. Some claimed it was a publicity stunt, others that she really had taken the test. There is no proof, but the legend of the smart blonde hiding her intellect behind an image became part of her myth. Friends recalled that Marilyn kept private diaries. In them might have been her reflections, notes on roles, and records of meetings with powerful men. After her death, those notebooks disappeared. Some believed her relatives hid them, others the government agencies confiscated them to prevent the publication of compromising details. Even today, rumors sometimes surface that her lost writings are hidden somewhere. These small fragments create another portrait of Marilyn. Not only the star and beauty icon, but a woman whose life was full of secrets, where every trace of individuality seemed to dissolve into myths and speculation. By the early 1950s, Marilyn Monroe was already dazzling on screen, and Joe DiMaggio was a baseball legend. Known as the Yankee Clipper, he was a national hero, or a symbol of strength and discipline, one of the most famous athletes in America. Together, they looked like a couple out of a Hollywood fairy tale, the most desired woman in the world and the country's beloved sports icon. They met in 1952. Despite his star image, Joe was shy and reserved. He pursued Marilyn persistently, but with a gentleness that surprised her, inviting her to quiet dinners instead of lavish banquets. To Marilyn, this was unexpected. Beside her was not a typical Hollywood playboy, but a man who longed for simplicity. They married on January 14th, 1954, in San Francisco. The wedding created a sensation. Thousands gathered outside City Hall just to catch a glimpse of the newlyweds. The newspapers called them the perfect American couple. But behind the glitter of the photographs lay deep contradictions. Joe dreamed of a quiet wife and a cozy home. He wanted Marilyn to give up Hollywood and devote herself to family life. For him, her revealing roles, swimsuit photo shoots, and on-screen kisses were painful to watch. The most difficult moment came during the filming of The 7-Year Itch, 1954, when Marilyn's white dress flew up over a subway grate. The scene became one of the most legendary images in cinema, but for DiMaggio, it was a humiliation. Witnesses said that immediately after filming, They had a bitter fight. Their marriage lasted only 9 months. In October 1954, they divorced. In court documents, Marilyn cited mental cruelty. It did not mean physical abuse, but his jealousy and attempts to control her became unbearable. And yet the story did not end with the divorce. Despite their breakup, Joe continued to care for her throughout her life. He was the one who organized her funeral, and for 20 years afterward, he arranged for fresh roses to be delivered to her grave every week. For Marilyn, the marriage reflected her inner struggle, the longing to be loved as a woman within a family, and the simultaneous need to remain an artist adored by the world. After the turbulent and painful divorce from Joe DiMaggio, Marilyn longed for someone who would see not just the beauty icon, but the intelligent, sensitive woman beneath. She thought she found that person in Arthur Miller, the celebrated playwright, author of Death of a Salesman. They had first met in 1951, but nothing came of it then. Their true relationship began later, when Marilyn had grown weary of shallow romances and men who saw her only as a glamorous image. In Miller, she found depth. He wrote serious plays, reflected on the meaning of life, and with him she felt like more than an actress. She felt like a person. They married in June 1956. The wedding was modest, but the press called it the wedding of the century, framing their union as the contrast between the naive blonde and the intellectual philosopher. Marilyn hoped this marriage would finally bring her peace. She even converted to Judaism to be closer to Miller and his family, a gesture of seriousness and her desire to build a true home. But reality was more complicated. At first, Miller saw her as inspiration, a muse that fueled his writing. But soon he grew weary of her fragility, insecurity, and emotional breakdowns. In his private notebooks, which Marilyn once accidentally read, he admitted he was disappointed in her. This discovery wounded her deeply. During this period, her mental health worsened. She relied increasingly on sleeping pills, suffered from insomnia, and endured severe mood swings. The filming of Let's Make Love, 1960, became a torment. Constant arguments with the director, lateness, forgotten lines, and yet at the same time, she delivered one of her most poignant performances in The Misfits, 1961. A script Miller had written especially for her. The irony was cruel. That film became their farewell. During its production, their relationship finally collapsed, and in 1961, they divorced. Marilyn confided to friends, "I thought he would see my soul, but he only saw what he wanted." That marriage became a symbol of her unfulfilled hope for quiet happiness and true intimacy. After it ended, she entered the most difficult period of loneliness in her life. The early 1960s became the time when light and shadow finally intertwined for Marilyn. On one side, success, the status of the most famous woman in Hollywood. On the other, insomnia, anxiety, and a growing dependence on sleeping pills and barbiturates. Around her, rumors multiplied, each one only fueling public fascination. The most famous was her alleged affair with President John F. Kennedy. Their meetings were surrounded by an almost mythical aura. Some claimed it was just a brief romance, others insisted there was something more than a fleeting intrigue. Her performance at the president's birthday in 1962 became legendary. The silk of her dress shimmered like a second skin. Her voice was soft, almost intimate. It seemed as though she was singing not for thousands of spectators, but for one man. In In that moment, the entire world saw her as a woman of mystery. But beyond the stage, there grew a sense that Marilyn knew too much. Rumors spread that she kept diaries where she recorded conversations with powerful men. Later, those notebooks vanished, and to this day, no one knows whether they ever truly existed or were nothing more than invention. Her death on August 5th, 1962, became the final enigma. The official version was an overdose of barbiturates, suicide. But almost immediately, contradictions appeared. Why was her phone line almost continuously busy that night? Why did police reports contain strange inconsistencies? Why did some neighbors claim to have seen unfamiliar cars near her house? Some believed it was a desperate choice by the actress herself. Others said she was removed because of her ties to the Kennedys. Still others insisted it was an accident. She had simply taken too many pills in an attempt to fall asleep. But no explanation ever closed the question completely. The mystery lived on together with her image. At her funeral, Joe DiMaggio, her former husband, stood silent and grim. He organized the ceremony so that almost no one from Hollywood was present, as if he wanted to shield her from the very world that had made her a star, and at the same time destroyed her. For 20 years afterward, he sent fresh roses to her grave every week. Thus ended the life of a woman who, in just 36 years, became a symbol. And perhaps it was her death, shrouded in mystery and rumor, that turned Marilyn Monroe not only into an actress, but into a myth of eternal beauty, loneliness, and unfinished stories. Hollywood's dream factory welcomed Marilyn Monroe with both excitement and cruelty. The studios saw not a person but an image, the embodiment of the sexy blonde, a role that sold better than anything else. She dreamed of serious roles, studied acting, read Chekhov and Shakespeare. Yet most often she was offered the same type, the naive beauty who evoked laughter and desire. Her films brought in millions. Niagara, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, and The 7-Year Itch made her a star. The poster for Niagara, where she stands against the waterfall in a tight dress, became a symbol of a new sexuality in Hollywood. In Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, her performance of Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend in a glittering pink gown became one of cinema's most iconic moments. And yet, behind this screen, success lay disappointment. She felt that Hollywood was turning her into a caricature of herself. To prove her seriousness, Marilyn took an unprecedented step for an actress of her time. She founded her own production company. This decision unsettled studio bosses who were not used to stars demanding control. Marilyn Monroe Productions gave her the right to choose scripts and directors. It was thanks to this that she pursued the film Bus Stop, 1956, where she played the vulnerable singer, Cherie. Critics finally recognized her as a serious actress, not only a beauty. She studied Stanislavski, attended Lee Strasberg's actor studio in New York, and sought depth in her performances. Her work in Bus Stop showed the public a new Marilyn. Fragile, authentic, able to express inner struggle. But even then, the world continued to see her primarily as a symbol. The famous scene from The 7-Year Itch, with the white dress billowing over a subway grate, sealed her as the ultimate sex symbol of the 20th century. The photograph of her holding down the flying skirt circled the globe. For the public, it was triumph. For Marilyn, it was a source of pain, fueling arguments with her jealous husband, Joe DiMaggio. Thus, Hollywood gave Marilyn Monroe incredible fame, but denied her freedom. She stood between two worlds. For the studios, she was a commodity, a marketable image. For herself, she longed for recognition as an artist. Hollywood was never a place of true friendship. More often, it was an arena of rivalry for roles, contracts, and fame. For Marilyn Monroe, this was especially painful. Her rapid rise inspired admiration from the public, but envy and suspicion from her colleagues. Among those who genuinely supported her was actress Jane Russell, her co-star in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. On screen, they were perfect opposites, the sultry brunette and the radiant blonde, but off-screen, they found common ground. Jane later recalled that Marilyn often came to set nervous and unsure of herself, and she tried to encourage her. Russell even defended her before studio executives when Monroe arrived late or suffered bouts of anxiety. Director Billy Wilder also played an important role in her career. He cast her in two iconic films, The 7-Year Itch and Some Like It Hot. Wilder described her as a genius but the most difficult actress I ever worked with. He often complained about her lateness and trouble remembering lines, but admitted that her charm was irreplaceable. Critics later agreed, without Monroe, Some Like It. Hot would have been just a good comedy. With her, it became a masterpiece. But Marilyn also had her share of adversaries. Daryl F. Zanuck, the powerful head of 20th Century Fox, never believed in her dramatic ability and saw her only as a box office commodity. When she founded her own production company and demanded more control over her career, Zanuck was furious. Their clashes became part of Hollywood legend, an actress defying the studio system. Some fellow actresses also treated her with disdain. Bette Davis and Joan Crawford dismissed her as a starlet without craft and accused her of being overrated. Crawford once publicly criticized Marilyn, calling her career built on posing. The remark deeply wounded Monroe, who was acutely sensitive to criticism. Yet there were also those who saw her vulnerability rather than her fame. Acting teacher Lee Strasberg and his wife Paula became mentors and almost surrogate parents to her. Their home was one of the few places where Marilyn felt safe and accepted. In her will, she left the majority of her estate to Strasberg, proof of how much they meant to her. In Hollywood, Marilyn had few true friends and many rivals, but even her critics admitted one thing: it was impossible to remain indifferent to her. She drew attention in a way no one else could, and that alone made her the most unforgettable figure of her time. Marilyn Monroe became more than an actress. She turned into a cultural symbol of the 20th century. Her image transcended cinema and Hollywood, embedding itself into art, fashion, and the collective imagination. On screen, she created roles that became eternal. The 7-Year Itch, with the legendary white dress flying over a subway grate, remains one of the most recognizable images in film history. Some Like It Hot was later named by the American Film Institute as the greatest comedy of all time, and critics agreed that Marilyn's presence elevated it beyond a mere farce. Her characters blended innocence with sensuality, humor with vulnerability, a combination that captivated millions. But Monroe's influence extended far beyond movies. She became a fashion icon. Jean Louis gowns, her platinum blonde hair, the signature red lipstick and winged eyeliner, all of it defined a new standard of femininity. Shops sold Marilyn dresses, salons copied her hairstyle, and young women across the world mimicked her walk and smile. Her cultural impact reached into visual art, In the 1960s, Andy Warhol created his famous Marilyn diptych, turning her into the ultimate pop art icon. The repetition of her face in bright colors emphasized that Marilyn was no longer just a person, but a myth, an image that had taken on a life of its own. She also left her mark in music. Her breathy performance of "Happy Birthday, Mr. President" for John F. Kennedy in 1962 became one of the most famous moments in American pop culture. Provocative, intimate, unforgettable. In literature and philosophy, her name became a metaphor. Writers and thinkers saw her as the embodiment of female mystery, fragility, and strength. Biographies, novels, and poems about her continue to appear. Feminist critics interpret her image as both an exploited stereotype and a symbol of resistance. Monroe became a mirror of the 20th century, an era of rapid change, sexual revolution, and the cult of media. She was both an orphan girl and a Hollywood goddess, and it was this paradox that turned her into an eternal icon. After August 5th, 1962, Marilyn did not disappear. Her image began a new life. At Westwood Memorial Park in Los Angeles, flowers still appear at her grave every year. For decades, Joe DiMaggio himself sent roses every Wednesday. Her death did not close the story. It transformed her into myth. Her legacy quickly became the subject of disputes and management. Most of her estate went to Lee Strasberg, and after his death, control passed to his widow. Over time, Marilyn Monroe became one of the most valuable names in the world. A brand used on posters, fashion lines, advertisements. Her playful quote about Chanel No. 5 at bedtime is still reused in campaigns, and her silhouette remains shorthand for femininity in design and marketing. The market for her artifacts proved her lasting power. In 2011, the white dress from The 7-Year Itch sold for over $5.5 million at auction, a record for a film costume. In 2016, the glittering gown she wore while singing "Happy Birthday, Mr. President" fetched nearly $4.8 million. In 2022, the same dress resurfaced at a major gala, sparking controversy about preservation and ethics. Another reminder of how alive her memory remains. In art, Monroe became immortal. Andy Warhol's Marilyn diptych, 1962, made her the ultimate pop icon. And in 2022, one version, shot sage blue Marilyn, set a record as the most expensive artwork of the 20th century sold at auction. Decades later, her face is still currency in the art world. Photography also preserved her forever. Bert Stearns' The Last Sitting in 1962, along with portraits by Milton Green and Eve Arnold, are endlessly republished, exhibited, and sold. They reveal two Marilyns, the radiant icon and the fragile woman, caught moments before the light faded. Cinema and literature keep returning to her life. The 2011 film My Week with Marilyn won Michelle Williams a Golden Globe for her portrayal, while Joyce Carol Oates' novel Blonde was adapted in 2022, once again igniting debates about truth versus myth. Biographies appear year after year. Her story is studied in courses on cinema, gender, and psychology. Music, too, immortalized her. In 1973, Elton John and Bernie Taupin wrote "Candle in the Wind," framing Marilyn as a metaphor for a fragile flame extinguished too soon. The song revived her memory for a new generation, and its 1997 re-recording in honor of Princess Diana became one of the best-selling singles in history, indirectly binding Monroe's name forever to the idea of tragic beauty. Critics also re-evaluated her work. The American Film Institute placed Some Like It Hot at the top of its comedy rankings and listed Monroe among the greatest actresses of all time. Where once she was dismissed as a pretty face, today she is praised for her comic timing, vulnerability, and screen presence. Tourism, memorials, and digital culture keep her alive. Annual vigils take place at her grave, exhibitions tour the world, and her official archives release remastered images and footage. On social media, her quotes and clips gather millions of views. For new generations, she is first a meme and icon, then, through curiosity, rediscovered as an actress. Perhaps the most enduring truth is this: Marilyn After Marilyn is the story of how a private life became collective memory. She came to embody both fantasy and fragility, glamour and pain. That is why her name remains a password of the 20th century. Say Marilyn, and images, melodies, and myths rise instantly, living proof of a woman the world refuses to let fade.